Oh, come, gather around the fire, the fire.
From the headquarters of the Guild of Champions, this is the Chris Terrell Podcast. And I am your host, Chris Terrell. And welcome to another week of your weight loss quest. How did this last week go for you, champion? What new challenges did you encounter? But more importantly, what failure did you go through and what lesson did you get from that failure? Come on now. Don't let a perfectly good failure go by without you getting your lesson. That's your reward for your troubles, after all. Now, if you're new here, I've lost 125 pounds myself after an entire adulthood of chronic yo-yo dieting. Up, down again. Before I finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I made some permanent, meaningful, and actual changes to my lifestyle, habits, routines, environment, community, and to my systems of belief. Because it's all six forces of these that created the transformation that I got in my life. And if you want to get a transformation that lasts in your life, you're going to have to change all six of those as well. And now I'm here each week, years later, still teaching many people how to get this done in their life too. And I hope that I can help you a little bit more this week. I'm coming up on 200 episodes of the podcast. I believe today is episode 198. So we're just about there, and I'm really excited. I don't know what I'm going to do for episode 200. I don't know if I'm going to make some big to-do or if I'm just going to let it quietly pass on by as if it's just another episode, because it really is just another episode, and any meaning I give it is just meaning I've given it. But that is pretty cool that is coming up. But this week, we're going to talk about something that I know that so many people deal with in their life. Stress. Have you ever been stressed? I've been stressed. Stress is something that just seems to always find me in life. Does stress seem to find you in life? There's good stress, there's bad stress, there's stress that lasts, stress that passes. Well, I guess all stress passes, but there's some that passes quickly and some that tends to linger. And, I have come to realize that my ability to manage stress is important. It's an important thing to have. And I once used to approach stress as a reactionary thing. When I first got into coaching, I have had an intake questionnaire that I would have people do. I still use it if I take on anybody new. I still use that. And one of the questions that I would ask in there, it's a bit of a trick question, but I would ask the individual, how do you manage stress? That's it. No precursor, no preamble, no explanation, just how do you manage stress? And I would ask that person, how do you manage stress? So I want you to do this. As I'm talking for a second, just pause right now. You listening on the podcast. How do you manage the stress in your life? If you are, this afternoon, you become suddenly stressed, how do you deal with it? Do you know? Do you have a process? And you see, when I would ask people, how do you deal with stress? I would get all sorts of answers like, I go on a walk, I sit down on my phone, I turn on TV. Of course, a common answer is, I eat. I try to distract myself. Essentially what happens is a person talked from a standpoint of, I get stressed and then I do something about it. I get stressed and then I do something about it. And as I said, that was always a trick question, because what I was actually looking for is not those answers, but I was looking to see, does the person reactively manage their stress, or does the individual proactively manage their stress? If a person is reactionary, as in they wait to get stressed and then they deal with it, I know that stress rules their life, because when stress shows up, a person will do something because the stress showed up. They're the plaything of stress. I lived my life this way for a long time. Get a call from a customer, very unhappy. I'm now stressed and now I've got to deal with it, right? Well, there's proactive stress management. So I would often, when the person would give me the answers, I would write down all the answers they'd give me, and I would identify if it was a proactive or a reactive approach to stress. And usually most of them, if not all of them, were reactive. And I would say that, I would say, hey, you gave me all these answers. All of these appear to be reactionary in nature. How do you proactively manage stress? As in, what do you do to make sure you never get stressed in the first place? And what's interesting is many, many times the person I was talking to didn't have an answer. They had no conscious answer just sitting there waiting for them. Now, sure, with some poking and prodding, we could uncover some things that they were doing in their life that was reducing stress. But many times when a person struggles with emotional eating, one of the common things that I see is that the person has no proactive coping strategies for dealing with stress. They wait till the stress shows up and then they deal with it. Sure, they try to keep the stressful influences out of their life, and a person will think that is proactive, and sure, a case can be made that that is. However, that doesn't work. Because if you attempt to manage your stress by just eliminating the stressful influences out of life, the only way to do that is you need to be unalive. Because, life is stressful. Life is full of stressful circumstances, and there are many of them wander into your life completely beyond your ability to control them. And if the way you want to proactively manage stress is just to prevent the stressful influences from showing up, you're going to be regularly disappointed and discouraged because you can't do that. Sure, you can do it some. That is the answer for some things. Sometimes the answer is get the source of stress out of my life. Let me just not have it show up. And again, strong case to be made, but that is not it. And that ignores something very important, which is one of the things that contributes to stress in a person's life is their desire, nay, even maybe an obsession with controlling everything, with controlling the uncontrollable. You can't do that and have less stress in your life. Now, before we dive into this topic a little bit more and we talk about stress, because I'm going to share with you my proactive stress management techniques, a few of them, I would like to just let everybody know that the Guild doors are opening in 2 weeks. So if you've been thinking about joining the Guild of Champions and joining my community, I would love to have you come be a part of it. If you're ready to take that weight loss journey to the next level, maybe you've lost some weight, or maybe you're even on the starting line. You tried going at it on your own the first part of the year and it's been a struggle. But for whatever reason, you're like, I'm ready to level up. I'm ready to join this program. There's 2 ways you can do this. First, you can go to the link in the show notes and click on that, and that'll take you to the wait list. Or 2, you can go to theguildofchampions.com, click I'm not a guild member, and then on that page, there'll be an option to get your name on the wait list. I'm about to be emailing everybody on the wait list. For the next 2 weeks, I'm going to go ahead and begin coaching you through email. I'm going to go ahead and start now. So if you're already on the wait list, you can register again, it won't hurt. But get on the wait list, and I'm going to begin sending you emails today, coaching you, getting you ready for the doors to open in a couple of weeks. And this is important because my program is not a you sign up and you're on your own. It did used to be that way. It's not now. I changed that last year. And I actually personally group coach all new people at once. You're separated from the rest of the guild. You're just with me and just with the new people that joined. I bring in some seasoned guild members, some people that have already lost a lot of weight. And that way they're there to help you as well. And for about 6 weeks, will teach you what you need to know to get going. It's a great program. I call it the On-Ramp program. I'm currently working with the group now. We got 2 more weeks left. We got this week and next week left, and then I'm done. And then I can work and bring with the next group. Because it's really important that I work with you and help you make sure also you get your questions answered right away. So you can, again, sign up to that by looking in the show notes of the podcast or by heading over to theguildofchampions.com, getting your name on the wait list. The doors will only be open for 3 days. Okay, they'll be open for 3 days and then they close. So if only one person joins, awesome for that one person. There won't be just one person that joins. But 3 days, then they close, period. I have a schedule to keep. So if you want to get in, come in. The doors then close for a couple of months again, right? So they're open, March? And the last time they were open was January. So now's your chance. Otherwise, you got to wait again for another couple of months. Guildofchampions.com. That's theguildofchampions.com. Now let's talk about how I learned to reduce the stress in my life. Because when I started working on my weight loss journey, seeking to reduce stress was a major, major part of that. I have been actively seeking to manage and reduce and eliminate stress in my life for 6 years. For 6 years, I've been working on that as a major focus of my life. And here's the crazy thing. I learned a lot. And over time, I've eliminated a lot and realized it's only a handful of things that actually made the truly meaningful and lasting difference. There are things I did in the beginning of my stress management journey that I don't do now because I found more effective things to do. But one of the things I'm going to let you know is daily practices are really important. Often the answer to shifting stress is going to be you're going to recontextualize things in your own mind. I'm just going to go ahead and give you one of the punchlines. And so you're going to want to be practiced at being within your own mind, seeing your own thoughts, understanding what is happening. And this is best done with a daily practice of being present with your thoughts. And you should be doing this all the time. The more you do it, the easier it will become to do it. Now, I'm really not certain, though, that there's a specific order in how you need to learn to manage your stress, the different techniques. In my case, it certainly was not a specific order. It was definitely an evolution. I'm hoping I could maybe shortcut some of this for you. But, you know, the reality is some days it was genuinely easier to handle the presence of a stressor. So let me explain that term, stressor, real quick. There's stress, which is your experience, and then there's a stressor, a thing that was the trigger of the stress within you. It triggered the chain of events that ended with you experiencing stress. So a stressor could be an unruly client sends you a nasty email, right? Or you get into an accident, or something happens to a loved one, or you trip and fall, right? A stressor. And on some days, the presence of a stressor, I could handle it. It really wasn't that bad. And other days, the exact same stressor would completely and totally stress me out, and I'd have a hard time dealing with it. So what I would do, and when I noticed that the same thing could stress me some days and not others. So in my mind, I started going, I don't think it's the thing that's stressing me out. But the thing is stressing me out sometimes. But I don't think it's the thing that's stressing me out because sometimes it doesn't stress me out. What is different? What is different between one and the other? And I actually would run tests in my own life and see how I would react and respond. And I discovered something. Some stressors were easier to navigate and to learn to not have them stress me out so much anymore. Some of them were really difficult. I mean, really difficult. I noticed, though, that the more I cared about the outcome of a situation, the more difficult it was for me to work through the stress. Yeah, like if a person down the street's going to make a decision that's going to result in them having a bad time in life for a few days, that didn't stress me out that much. But if a loved one, say one of my stepkids, is going to do something that I'm worried is going to stress me, that's going to result in a bad situation for them, that sometimes creates a stress within me that is a challenge to work through because I have an interest in the outcome. So that's one thing I observed as I worked through this, that my interest in outcomes had a direct correlation on the ability of that thing to stress me out. And as time progressed, though, I had a lot more realizations. Now, here's the fun thing. Those of you on the YouTube or Spotify video, I'm holding up my journal. I actually have written this down in a journal. I'm going back through old journal entries. I've been doing that the last several podcasts. I've been really enjoying it. Just like stuff that I haven't revisited in quite some time, or things that I've never shared at all. There's a lot in here that'll never get shared. But like as an example, this whole first I don't know, I probably got 30 pages in here of me just studying how to have difficult conversations with other people. Trying to understand why it is so hard for two humans to communicate and how it could be improved. I fully expect to share all this. I got this really fun diagram. Come on, camera. I don't know if the camera's going to show it, but I'm going to explain that in a guild meeting because we're going to do a whole deep dive into difficult conversations. That's something coming up because, why? Conversations lead to stress. They can lead to a lot of stress in a person's life. And if a person is not working through the stress of these difficult conversations, this could lead to repeated emotional eating. And so learning how to have good conversations with people is a really important part to overcoming emotional eating. Now, unfortunately, I navigated away from my page. So 1 second. I got to get back to, here it is. How did I learn to stress less? I just wrote that. How did I learn to stress less? I wrote that down at the top of the page and I filled it out. I have 5 things on this page. These are the 5. These are the big 5. There's others. There's little ones. There's others that'll make it on the list. There's some that were on the list that are not on the list anymore. But these are the big 5. Now, I've already touched on number 1. Let me tell you about number 1 again. Unmet expectations create stress. I realized that if I wanted to proactively or preemptively prevent stress from showing up in my life, something I needed to do was to begin setting less or no expectations around a thing. That's challenging because, as I said, when you care about the outcome, when you care, that's really difficult. Because your mind, and we'll get to number 5 here, your mind will have a tendency to make that difficult. So let's move on from number 1 because we'll get to why that's so important. But just remember this is an underlying thing. Expectations are premeditated discouragements. An expectation is just you planning to get stressed. Number 2, I don't always know that I have expectations. So how did I learn to, one of the ways I learned to eliminate stress in my life is to recognize that I am unconsciously setting and making expectations and getting emotionally invested in these unconsciously, below the surface of the water, as it were. Or I set the expectation sometime in the past and I forgot, but my subconscious didn't forget. And it's crazy how much an unconscious expectation can completely stress a person out. You could think, I don't got any expectations on how this goes. And then it goes some way and you're like, oh, no, I don't like this at all. That's you having an expectation. Maybe. Well, actually, hold on. There's some nuance here. Sometimes there's just acknowledging that, oh, this is an unpleasant expectation, an unpleasant experience. Like when I rolled my ankle a year and a half ago. And I mean, it was bad. It hurt. It hurt real bad. I was in the middle of running, training, and it would have been very easy to be discouraged, but I had no expectations. So it's like, okay, this is just what I'm dealing with now. And so this leads to number 3. Why? And you know, because you got to think like, okay, so if expectations lead to stress, why do I keep setting expectations then? And I think a lot of us know this, but number 3, worrying about the future is helpful in infrequent small doses only. There it is. That's why. I once used to worry about the future excessively and in frequent doses. In large, frequent doses. I could dedicate an entire hour drive worrying about shit that's going to happen in the future that's not happening right now, even though I have very little I can do about it, maybe even nothing. I'm going to worry. I remember I would have a client call and I would, I used to be in commercial cleaning, and let me tell you, some people are just absolute jerks to cleaning companies. I mean, just mean. So to any of you that manage a cleaning company, be nice. Come on. They're cleaners. But anyway, you take out 10,000 trash cans and we'll hear about the one we missed. We're only as good as last night's cleaning. And I'd wake up in the morning, I'd see an email or a phone call from a customer. Hey, I need you to come by the office. We need to meet. That's almost never good. And so, of course, I got a 45-minute drive to the building and I'm just worrying. What are they going to say? What happened? How am I going to handle it? Oh, no. Is this going to lead to me losing my job? This is going to make my boss so mad. Oh, no. They're going to tell me this and I'm going to have to go to this employee and I'm going to have to tell them they're going to do something. I'm going to make them feel so bad and I don't want to feel so bad. I would, for 45 minutes, ruminate over what could happen. And would just work myself into a tizzy. And you know what got me through that? Krispy Kreme donut holes, of course. You see, I drove by it. I didn't have to, but I often did. And I knew that if I saw that light on, I was probably going to stop and get a fresh couple of 6 Krispy Kreme glazed donuts, have at least 3 or 4 of them, or I was going to get the large size of the donut holes. Like I literally had this whole ritual. I imagine it's why I like Dexter, the serial killers, the way that he would talk about how he's going to go on a hunt and what he's going to do. And that's how I felt about food. I was like a serial killer of donuts. And so I would pull up to the Krispy Kreme. I had this whole route. I would get up there. I would drive on the road and I'd look over and I would do the will, I won't. And I'd be like, well, yeah, I'm going to go in it. I'll go in and I'll get the small thing of donut holes because that's reasonable. And then I would pull up one person. Feel so ashamed that I'm about to order the amount of donuts I'm about to order. But, it's drive-through. No one really had to see me. I would pull up to the drive-through. And I'd look at the menu, and then I'd pull up to the door or to the window, and I would do this thing. They're like, what would you like to get? And I'd be like, and in my head, I'm like, get the little one or get the big one. Oh, but if you get the big one, they're going to judge you. They're going to worry about this. They're going to think you're a fat ass. Oh, but you want the big one. Oh, no, get the small one. That way they don't judge you. But I want the big one. I'm going to get the big one. I deserve this. And so I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to get the big one. They don't know that I'm going to eat all this. For all they know, I'm taking this to the office. Yeah, I'll take the big thing of donut holes. Yeah. And so they bring it to me. Thank you. And I pull away and I reach in and I grab one and I put it in my mouth. And you know what I haven't thought about once the last 8 minutes? That stressful customer meeting I'm about to go to. I ain't thought about it once in the last 8 minutes. Not a single one. Not a single time did I think about it. And you know what else I didn't do? I turned on the music. I enjoyed myself with the music. I'm putting the donut holes in my mouth. I'm driving. I'm like, this is awesome. Not thinking at all about the meeting. I'm just like, I'm just going to enjoy this drive. Thinking I'm getting all up in the present. But what I was doing is I was running away from what was coming by distracting myself and numbing myself out with some donuts. I did this all the time. This is back in like 2008, 9, 10, 11, and 12. I did it all the time. I did it for years. 9, 10, 11, 12. 4 years I did that. Regularly would go by and get donuts. I would stop in that same Krispy Kreme donuts and get six old-fashioned donuts at about 400 calories a pop, and I would eat 4 of them on the way to a client meeting that was going to be stressful. 4 times, let's see, what are they? I think 450 calories, we'll say. So 4 times 450, I would eat 1,800 calories of donut on the way to meet a stressful client. Why? Because I was stressed. And the way I managed it was by distracting myself. That was a reactionary way of doing it. And the reason why I did it is because my mind was running off to the future and I was scaring myself and I was freaking myself out. And I knew I didn't consciously know, but a part of me knew I needed to get back to the present and just enjoy myself, but I didn't know how to do it unless I had something like food. Food was one of my absolute favorite grounding things. I could eat food and it would bring me to the present, or it would whisk my mind away to an old, lovely memory, because the olfactory sensors like your nose is an incredibly powerful tool for getting you connected to the past again. And I've now come to realize, as I sought to proactively manage stress, that despite my brain's protests to go to the future and worry about things that haven't happened yet, I would have better results if I just didn't worry about it. I just didn't think about the future very much. I just stayed where I was. Well, Chris, you need to plan for what's happening. I didn't know what that customer was going to tell me. I had no idea. Their email just said, come meet me at 9:30. We'll talk then. And I didn't. And of course, I could have sent them an email and been like, may I ask what this is relating to so that I can go ahead and prepare and show up well prepared for our meeting. I could have easily said something like that, which would have given me the answer, but I was so scared of what they'd tell me that then I would drive the whole time knowing I'm driving to something bad. At least this way there was a chance it wasn't good. I didn't want to know for sure one way or the other. I was just a hot mess, and the only way I knew how to handle it was with food. Going to the future is fine. You can look to it, you can prepare for it, but you can't live there. Your brain can't operate in the future. You can't operate in the future. You can only operate in the present moment. Because when the future's here, it's the present moment. And to reduce the stress proactively in my life, I only visit the future in small doses infrequently. A few times a day, but never hanging out there for very long. Otherwise, let's get back to here and to what we're doing now. Because this leads to number 4. The number 4 thing, and we're talking about it, 3 and 4 kind of go together, but focusing on the future in a lengthy way creates expectations. If I go to the future and hang out there, what'll happen is I will find a future that I either A, am like, yeah, I would very much like that future to happen, or B, no, I would very much like that future not to happen. And so I realized that when I do go to the future, because sometimes I do need to, it is vital that I don't become emotionally invested in whatever I fantasize. Because when you go to the future, it's just a fantasy. It's just what you think's going to happen. Sure, it might be plausible. It might not be. But I might cast myself in the future and be like, ooh, look at this beautiful thing. I really want to have this happen. And so I get emotionally invested in that outcome. And when I get emotionally invested in that outcome, I run the risk of subconsciously setting an expectation. And this is scary because, a lot of people, they don't like their present. And the way they get through their present is by going to the future, imagining a scenario, and then building up hope. I'm going to get through the present on hope. Hope is fine, but hope can be scary. Hope can actually really mess a person up. I know that might be controversial to some, but I do not believe hope is always good. Because sometimes a person is using hope to deprive them of a pain that they need to feel because it's that pain that's going to cause them to change. And when you go to the future and your subconscious gets invested in an outcome, when you return to the present, your subconscious might have remained connected to that outcome. But that's best case scenario. Sometimes a person goes to the future, hangs out there, and they consciously get invested and consciously set an expectation. And when that happens, it gets even worse. Because what happens? Often the expectations, they go unmet. Sure. Sometimes it exceeds the expectation, and most people are very happy when that happens. You shouldn't be, but they're happy when it happens. But when it doesn't live up to the expectation, then the person feels discouraged, disappointed, unpleasant. But I suppose if I had to think about what is one of the biggest things I do that help keep the stress manageable in my life, that I learned on my weight loss and I've been still doing to this day. I haven't stopped because it works. It's getting out of my head. I used to live in my head. Now, if a person met me, they might be like, well, Chris, don't you do that now? Okay, fair point. I am in my head a lot now. So I suppose I should clarify what I mean in the context of this conversation when I say being in my head led to stress. It was excessively thinking. The problem with thinking, because you have to remember, you are not your thoughts. You're the observer of your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. You have thoughts. Thoughts occur in your mind and you observe these thoughts. So cool how the brain works. And so when you engage in humanity's number one addiction, which is thinking, humans are way addicted to thinking. When you over-engage in thinking, your mind will begin to distort reality. Thinking distorts reality. The more you think, the more you distort. And so what I have realized that I did, and I am striving not to do, is that for me to reduce the stress in my life, I must stop thinking so much about everything. Thinking is a great tool and totally should be used. I'm not saying don't think ever. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying think when appropriate. Use your thinking mind in a helpful way. to solve a problem, for example. The thinking mind is tremendously effective at problem solving. But what happens when you're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist? The thinking mind might create a scenario that convinces you that the problem does exist. And so you're now using the thinking mind to solve a problem that doesn't exist because the thinking mind convinced you the problem was real. If you stay stuck in your head too long, the reality that you live in, that you perceive, will begin to diverge from actual reality. And that will make it difficult for people to help you. You see, one of the ways that people mentioned that they use to reactively deal with stress is they would use people, therapists, friends, family, and they'd talk with them. The problem is, if you are relaying a distorted view of reality to these people, they won't be able to help you because they only know based off of what you told them, and you told them a distortion. They don't know you distorted reality because you're not saying you did, more than likely. You are probably saying, this is what I saw and it's a fact. It's a fact. You're not saying, this is how I saw it. I recognize I could totally be messing it up, but this is how I saw it. And so a way to reduce stress is to become more connected with the present moment and to have your mind become more aware of what reality is. Because when you are present and when you are perceiving reality for as it is, you will begin to make different decisions and it will be easier to reduce the stress. So reality is a tricky thing. Because our brain is always adding a story to everything we're seeing. You see, our eyes are not just windows for our mind to see the world through. Our eyes and our mind is also a projector, and it is projecting a movie on top of the scene that is playing out in front of us. And so we are seeing reality mixed with our own distortions, and we are unaware that we're doing it a lot of times. But our mind, if we're not careful, we won't question what we're seeing. We will just accept it as truth without realizing that we have just accepted fabrications as reality because we put them right next to reality and we didn't make sure we knew we did that. And then fast forward a year later, when you go back into your mind to recall what happened, as far as you're concerned, it all happened. Sometimes we'll do this literally from 5 minutes prior because as the scene was playing out, we were distorting it in real time. That's what's crazy, I realize, about the mind. The mind has the ability to, in real time, distort what is happening. Why would we do that? There's a lot of benefits to seeing what is actually happening and working with that. There's a lot of drawbacks to altering reality. Why would we do that then? Why is it such a universal human thing to do that? And this is something that I've realized over the course of the journey. Why? Who? Who is doing this? Because it's me. But I don't want to do it. It's because it's not me that's doing it. It's something else. But it's something that is within me. It's something that is in fact mine that's doing it. It is in fact something that is within my mind that is doing it. It is in fact something that I have control over-ish that is doing it. There is something in my mind that is compelling the thinking mind to distort reality when it presents it to me, my higher self, the observer. Do you know what it is? I'm intentionally not saying it because I'm giving any of you listening a chance in your mind to be like, I think it's this. I think it's this. The reason why we distort reality is often, not exclusively, but often, our ego. Many people don't think they have an ego. Like, I don't have an ego. Yeah, you do. Everybody has a gargantuan, gigantic ego. Just as big as Donald Trump's. Just as big as the biggest movie star. Everybody has an ego. If your person's like, well, I don't have an ego. Oh, yeah, it does. You have an ego about not having an ego. Oh, I'm an introvert. I don't like to talk to any people. No, that is your ego. I'm an introvert. I like to do these things. An ego is another way you could say that it's your self-image. It's the sort of person I am. It is this identity within you. And it wants to operate in alignment and in accordance with that identity. And it doesn't want to change. And it will distort what is coming in if what is coming in would cause the ego to be invalidated, or if it would cause the ego to be wrong. The ego will fiercely defend itself. Now, some people's ego is a little more fragile than others. Having an ego doesn't mean you have a fragile ego, right? Not everyone has a fragile one. But a fragile ego will seek to defend itself. Now, some people might be like, did you just say I have a fragile ego? Yes, because most people have a fragile ego. Most people don't think they do, but most people do. It's very, very delicate. You can't touch it too much. I know because I poke people's egos all the time, and it's really interesting to watch what happens when you poke a person's ego. They act in very strange ways sometimes because some egos are fiercely defensive of themselves. And it will go so far as to lie to you. My ego will go so far as to lie to me about what I'm doing, about what I'm seeing. It will just, in my head, shout a new story and never quiet down. I'm going to do a little experiment here. This will be fun. So I'm going to play some music a little bit too loud while I'm talking. And I want you to notice just how hard it is to listen to me when this music is just playing a little bit too loud. You're trying to hear me. You're trying to cut through the music to listen to what I'm saying. And sure, in the moments of silence, you can hear what I'm saying. If you're straining, you might be able to hear what I'm saying. But it's just too loud. It's just too loud. And when that ego is in there just shouting at you never-endingly about what is happening, about what's what, about what didn't happen, about why it didn't happen, about how it's not your fault, about how it's actually this other fault, eventually you just like, I just need it to stop. And then we identify with our ego self. With our ego self. And this is a tricky journey to go on, to learn how to live with an ego. We all have one. It's like a pet. We all have one. And you can't get rid of it. And your ego is going to change. It's going to evolve over time. And you're always going to have one. There's concepts out there where people are trying to separate the ego. But it's not that the ego goes away. It's you detach from it and you understand that you're doing that. And you do it from a place of like, I am aware that I have detached from my ego self and I have an ego and it is messing up the waters. Now, this is a deep thing this has been a many year journey for me to even understand what I just said and for me to know how to do it. So for some of you, this is the first time you're hearing this concept of you have an ego. It stands apart from you and you can detach from it and the ego is messing with your thoughts. For some of you, this is the first time you're hearing this concept and your brain might try to make sense of it. Some of you, your ego just heard, red alert, red alert, red alert. He or she is starting to look. They might know I'm here. No, let's change it. Let's adapt this. Let's talk them out of it. You know what? We'll tell them, yeah, I understand that. I've already gone through it. I've already figured it out. Yeah. Let's tell them that. Let's get them off the scent. Because the ego wants you, my ego wants me, to look everywhere but at it. My ego doesn't want me to know it's there. My ego doesn't want me to know that it is trying to be in charge. My ego doesn't want me to know how it has, pardon the language, but fucked me several times. There have been many times when I have looked around my life and gone, I do not like this. I do not like that I am here. Why am I in this situation? It's my ego's fault. It's been my ego's fault for a while. And my ego's like, well, ain't my fault. Ain't me. It's that person. It's this thing. It's that. The ego wants no part of it. And again, what the ego will do is use truth. That person did indeed do something that was upsetting. But the ego's like, we're just not going to include the part where I added a whole bunch of scary story on top of what that person did. Let's not look at that part. Let's just look at their part. And let's only hyper-focus on their part. See, they did it. They did it. It wasn't me, self. This is what the ego does. And for many of us, it has been doing it for so long, we think that is, I used to think that voice was me. I'm that voice, this voice that is telling me I'm a failure. That's not me telling myself that. That's my ego telling myself that. Why would my ego tell me this? That's a topic for another day. It's my ego telling me this isn't going to work out, not me. When I just get completely taken over and slip into unconsciousness, my ego is calling the shots. And so to reduce the stress in my life, I found that reducing the amount of times the ego is in the driver's seat was going to help. Because you see, everything I'm saying here is not meant to elude or to imply that we should be seeking to get rid of the ego. That's not what I'm trying to say. I am saying to learn to work with an ego. It's an unruly business partner that you can't fire, right? You're stuck with them. You got to learn to make peace with them. Because if you make peace with your ego, you will become unleashed. Your ego is your superpower. But you see, an ego is like a chainsaw. A chainsaw is an incredibly powerful tool. You can use a chainsaw to clear an entire mountain of trees, but you can also use it to chop off your own leg without any problems. It has no problems chopping off your own leg. It doesn't care. It's a tool. It's going to be used in the way it's going to be used. And so your ego has the tremendous ability to transform your life, but it has the ability to ruin it as well. To just give you an absolutely miserable existence on this planet. Your ego has the ability to give you an incredible existence on this planet. But this is not going to come from the ego calling the shots. It's going to come from you calling the shots. But to get to that place, you must first be aware there's an ego. 2, learn that you're not it. And then 3, learning how to tell when you're talking and when your ego is talking. There's more steps after that. But just start with those 3. Because for some of you, that might take 4 years. This is why a lot of people don't work through this. A lot of therapists I've discovered don't work on this shit. Hey, therapists, can you tell me why? Like, no one's ever given me a good answer because every therapist I've talked to is very aware of everything I just said. But they're not like, I tell people this stuff to their face all the time. People are like, oh, I needed to know this. This is very helpful. And I'm like, you've been seeing therapists for 10 years. How have none of them had you like just held your nose up or held it up the mirror? I don't know. Maybe that's just not how therapy is supposed to work. I don't know. I'm not a therapist, so I don't really understand their rules. But being ego identified is just not a fun way to live. And most people, we start off ego identified and we move through our life that way. And so do you want to reduce stress? Reduce the hold ego has on you. To reduce the hold ego has on you, get into the present moment and begin to observe your thoughts. And as you begin to observe your thoughts, you'll begin to notice some very interesting things are happening in there. And as you begin to notice these interesting happenings in the mind, you'll begin to make different choices. And as you begin to make these different choices, you will begin to get different results. And as you begin to get these different results, you are going to begin to think differently. And the cycle is going to continue to progress. All right, everyone, let's wrap up here. If you've been thinking about joining the guild, as I said, the doors to the guild are opening in a couple of weeks. You can go get your name on the wait list at theguildofchampions.com or in the show notes. I'm going to be emailing today and begin coaching everybody on the wait list, whether you're joining or not. I'm going to coach you anyway. And I hope to see you in the guild, and have a great week on your weight loss quest this next week. And I'll see you next Friday on the Chris Terrell Podcast.